This is Fresh Tracks Weekly. This week we have Jared Frasier with us, who is with what was previously 2% for Conservation, but they are relaunching as Fish and Wildlife volunteers. So what they do is they certify businesses and individuals who volunteer their time for conservation. So people donate their time to a conservation organization of their choice, and Fish and Wildlife Volunteers authenticates that they actually volunteered their time and provides a certification. It's very cool stuff. Jared is going to walk us through the relaunch and let people know how they can get involved. But before that, we do have a few news stories from the week. In Alaska, a few weeks back, the state Supreme Court ruled that the Department of Game and Fish needed to halt their intensive predator management program, claiming that it was unconstitutional. So now the Department of Game and Fish is petitioning the Board of Game for an emergency regulation to allow the intensive management program to resume. The reason that this predator control program began was kind of a last-ditch effort to save the Mulchatna caribou herd. The herd had decreased from over 200,000 animals down to around 12,000. And as with anything with wildlife, it is never just one thing that causes declines. It is very difficult to pinpoint how much of an impact any one factor has. Some of the known factors include inflated numbers of caribou causing overgrazing of lichens and forage, climate change, changing plant communities, disease like brucellosis, and predation. So hunting has been closed down for the Mulchatna herd for a while now, and the Department of Game and Fish is running out of levers that they can pull to try to manage the herd. The caribou calving grounds had become somewhat of a hotspot for brown bears, and with the dwindling numbers of caribou, bear predation on calves began to have a significant impact on recruitment. So 2 years ago, Game and Fish began to aerial gun bears and wolves surrounding the caribou calving area, as this was the only main lever that they could pull to try to help. They've killed primarily brown bears, pushing upwards of 200 within that management zone, along with a handful of black bears and wolves. In the subsequent years, they have noticed increased cow-to-calf ratios that they haven't seen since the 90s. This intensive management program has drawn significant criticism, including some from former biologists and a Board of Game commissioner. The Alaska Wildlife Alliance submitted a petition to the state Supreme Court to stop this intensive management, which is what was recently ruled on. Critics have provided evidence of predator control programs that have been unable to accomplish their goals, while Alaska Game and Fish has provided evidence of predator control that has worked well in increasing cow-to-calf ratios. It'll be interesting to see how the Board of Game handles this request from the department. There are some that are questioning whether or not this is legal for them to institute an emergency regulation. Whenever you have charismatic predators, a lot of emotions are involved, so we'll surely see a never-ending debate on this topic. In Montana, there has been a major amendment to the water rights bill that would have allowed sales of isolated state land within the state. HB 676 initially would have required the state to sell isolated parcels of state land if the water right leaseholder wanted to buy it. This language, however, has been completely removed, and now the bill simply has to do with the state land water right holders' improvements and compensation for said improvements. So chalk this one up as a win for public land hunters and recreationists. Congressman Jeff Hurd has introduced the Productive Public Lands Act, which aims to reverse decisions made by Bureau of Land Management resource management plans in recent years for multiple areas within Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Oregon. So we talked a bit about resource management plans in a past episode, but it's a plan put together by the BLM taking into account multiple stakeholders finding a balanced use for resource extraction, livestock grazing, needs of wildlife, archaeological sites, etc. In these plans, they have multiple alternatives ranging from no action to a balanced use to a highly restrictive regulation option. They pretty much always land on something in the middle ground, allowing for resource utilization while taking into account the needs of wildlife and cultural desires. So the Productive Public Lands Act would essentially roll back all of the resource management plans that these BLM offices did to find that balanced option and just go back to the no action alternative, making it very easy to utilize land for resource extraction. In Washington, the Fish and Wildlife Commission has proposed regulations to significantly limit mountain lion and black bear hunting within the state. The Sportsmen's Alliance has put out a statement that they oppose these proposed regulations, claiming that they may even be unlawful, implying that they may sue the department if the regulations are adopted. Both mountain lion and black bear populations have been documented as being very healthy within the state in recent years and have been able to sustain current levels of hunter harvest. In the proposed regulations, they plan to combine the number of hunter-taken lions with the number of human conflict mortalities to go towards one total harvest cap of mountain lions at 16% of the population in each hunting unit. Basically, if enough lions are killed through human conflict issues before the hunting season starts, there won't even be a hunting season. For black bears, they plan to reduce the bag limit in 20 units, along with an outright closure of 14 units. You can check out the Sportsman's Alliance article for more information on the matter. A former Wyoming game warden and Game and Fish director will likely be the new director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. President Trump has nominated Brian Nesvik to replace the current director, Martha Williams, who was Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks director before being appointed by President Biden. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the agency responsible for federal wildlife refuges, enforcing federal wildlife laws, and the deal with federal regulations on migratory game birds and the Endangered Species Act. Several conservation groups have spoken out against the appointment as they worry about Nesvik's stance on chronic wasting disease, predator management, and how he aligns with the administration's plan to unleash America's energy potential. While other groups like Boone and Crockett Club and Safari Club International have offered their support for his nomination, Wyoming is known for their elk feed grounds, where recent news of chronic wasting disease deaths have caused more scrutiny about Nesvik and Wyoming Game and Fish management of the matter. He does, however, have significant credentials for the position, so will very likely be confirmed. All right, with that, we are going to jump into our deeper dive with Jared Frasier with Fish and Wildlife Volunteers. This week we have Jared Frasier joining us, which with what was 2% for conservation for how many years?
This would be our ninth year.
Ninth year. Yeah. But relaunched recently.
Yes.
Fish and Wildlife Volunteers.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's extremely exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on to talk about it.
Yeah. And of course Randy's here to, fill us in on everything.
Just for
yeah.
Here for comic relief and other stuff. But I'm responsible for talking Jared into that job.
Yeah, this is your fault.
I know.
Yeah.
So when we were looking for an executive director, the guys who founded 2%, you got anyone in mind? I'm like, I have the guy for you. And here you are, what? How many years later?
For me, this will be my 8th year.
Yeah. So.
All right.
I take full responsibility for the presence of Jared keeping this thing afloat.
As you should.
Yeah. But do you want to give us a little background?
Yeah.
And then also just what initiated the rebrand?
Yeah. So 2% for conservation, which is what we still are on paper until all the refiling and stuff can happen. 2% for conservation was launched as a certification nonprofit to certify businesses that give at least 1% of their gross sales. And then the time element was really convoluted, 1% of one employee's time that could be spread across however many employees. So that was launched in end of 2015, technically on paper, but officially in 2016. And our primary membership came out of the hunting world for the most part. We were launched out of Sitka's offices, but then the next business to come on was First Light and then Stone Glacier. So you had 3 direct competitors from day one. And over the last 9 years, we have certified tens of millions of dollars that went to conservation and tens of thousands of hours by businesses, but also individuals who signed a personal pledge. It wasn't a full-fledged membership, but said we want to do this too. And we helped them along the way, collected data so that we could help each of them help each other. Obviously data was kept private, but helped them, develop best practices for their volunteering programs and how they gave back their money. That is what we did. But over the last 5 years, certain trends have arisen. One of the big ones being the capacity of businesses to give back financially. It has just dropped off the map from where it was about 5 years ago. I would say in 2021, the average percent of a business's gross sales from within our membership that was given to conservation, whether in cash, product, or services, was about 5.5%. The last 2 years, they could barely make our standard.
Dang.
Their margins of 1% of gross.
Yeah.
And I mean just skin of teeth, barely making it. And that's us counting everything from product donations, services, marketing, campaign help, anything a business might do that would cost them money. We were counting that. And their ability shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, even though their desire kept growing because it was very beneficial to their business. On the other end of things, the certifying time for us started taking much, much more time, the certifying the dollars for time for us, how much time it took us to do it,
Because you would go through and actually calculate, make sure that all the money was coming in.
Find where a backpack actually went.
Yeah.
Maybe a bag of coffee, where it actually went to some chapter of some group in the middle of nowhere, somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. That went from, a very big business doing north of 30 million a year. And when I say very big, I mean in the hunting industry gear, that's very big. We've spoken with and worked with big businesses too. But for one of those, it would take about a week to go and certify their dollars given, about a week of our time to figure that out and confirm it. It now takes months and months and months for a business that size to go and find where they donated their dollars. And at that point, our concern is, are we providing the value to our membership?
Right. When it takes that amount of time just to calculate the numbers, it's just like, this time could be spent doing
just to confirm that they actually did it. And we could be providing the benefit that we used to, which was a lot of this, not hand-holding, because businesses don't want that, but they do want to be able to run their business and have something that is a perk to their employees that improves employee quality of life and is something that customers can easily understand is a good thing. And with turnover at conservation groups getting as high as it's gotten, 14 months on average for a development coordinator, that's the person who handles donations, which is who we would normally talk to, and 18 months for executive level, it is extremely hard to track that stuff down. And you have a added need for help on the volunteering side. And when we started seeing a lot of businesses getting bought over the last 3 to 4 years, as private equity purchases have gone way up, corporate buyouts and restructuring have gone way up since COVID. We've seen these businesses, they reach out and they go, hey, we don't have the margin to give back financially anymore, but we really like the volunteer program. Can you still do that with us?
Right.
And we want to, we wanted to, but, we couldn't advertise them alongside the people who are giving back financially. So this was something that was both market-driven, but then reality-driven. And ultimately, we're looking at culture and the needs of conservation right now, and how do we best address it. And so that's why this relaunch and rebrand are all happening right now, and I mean at speed right now.
Gotcha, yeah.
Well, I love the fact that it has the name volunteers in it.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a family where volunteering, I didn't even know it as a kid, that my dad was taking me out and we're planting trees. We were just I just thought that's what everybody did. And
everybody does that.
Yeah. So it's been a part of my life forever. Made my family, we did the same thing. But over the process of doing that, you come to realize the value of volunteers.
Yeah.
People are giving the most scarce thing that they have, their time. And it's not that money is under every couch cushion, but as our lives get busier and busier, the value of someone going and helping for an afternoon or an evening or whatever it is, it's really hard to place value on it because it's invaluable.
Yeah.
And so seeing that in the new name, I'm like, now we're
volunteered time is money. That's our
for sure.
That's our new tagline. And you look at what our members have been able to achieve over the last 9 years when they were also committing significant resources financially. Now, if they are focusing on what these volunteer programs can mean for their employees, for employee retention and well-being, but also, in the market and for consumers to understand this business actually gives back and we can see it because it was a real thing. Man, does that have an impact. Huge impact. Yeah,
I think it's fun for employees to get out too. It's just something, like you said, not everyone has excess time, but then maybe they have excess money. You always say time, talent, and treasure, right?
Yep.
That's what
the 3 T's.
The 3 T's. But it's fun to, I don't know, like when you get an entire crew out there of employees, like when we've gone out and done the fence poles, it's just, it's not only, good to give back, but it does, it builds teamwork just amongst the employees at the business too. I'm excited to see it as well.
I think it's an opportunity also for what you say, Jared. There are just a lot of businesses where the record keeping of it right? When I did our certification every year.
And you're an accountant.
Yeah, I'm a CPA. And Jared would have to send me a reminder or two because it's like, yeah, I got that. Yeah. But if it was a complicated business, we're pretty simple here. It would have taken a lot of time to do that. And I'm sure a lot of people say, I'd rather we spent our time getting our feet dirty out in the field doing some volunteering rather than having two bookkeepers chasing down receipts and donation slips and whatever, because it just is what it is. You know, you got to run the business so that you have the resources to do this part of it. And so when it becomes too much work or a lot of work, I can see where some businesses are like, Jared, we love you, man, but we can't keep going.
Well, and the realities are the margins too. Yeah. You know, we have the data on what, you know, the financial data from our membership from the last 9 years. And the numbers tell a very clear story. Employees and leadership teams benefit from when they go and work together. And they often struggle when they have to choose between their charitable giving and, let's say, holiday bonuses. Yeah. Which has happened.
Gotcha.
And we know from other certification programs and other give back programs, there have been layoffs at some companies, not within our membership, but layoffs within some companies so that they could keep these other programs that they're in. And when the employees find out about that, you want to talk about a culture killer.
Yeah.
But if you can refine your focus on how you give back and you can collaborate within your team and build something meaningful, and in some cases, literally build something. Even if it's you know, you have different team members who are they're volunteers on boards of different organizations, being able to leverage their time to make that volunteer time that they're doing more effective, that has a massive, massive impact compared to, as one of our founders, Jeff Hurd, used to say, anyone can write a check. Well, now I don't know if everyone can write a check.
Right.
But the volunteer time does set you apart. It absolutely sets you apart in the two areas that as a former business owner myself, employee and consumer understanding. Those are your two most important metrics when the market gets volatile. And this is a way that we can really, really help folks achieve. And we're not just doing it for businesses. We also launched an individual membership because we've had couple thousand people over the last 9 years sign the pledge. And that's about as much support as we could give them because we were, again, chasing down where a backcountry meal might have ended up in the far end of Canada in a donation package, you know. But now applying the information that we have on the business side and what we've worked on with individuals, you know, through their volunteering and the networks that they're a part of, providing them support so that their volunteer burnout rate goes down. That is another thing that is just crept higher and higher. And I know you guys see it because, I mean, you speak at how many banquets a year?
I just, if I look really tired, it's because I got done with 3 in a row.
Yeah. We've always talked about how, you know, there's the 80-20 rule of, you know, 20% of people doing 80% of the work. That's not the case in the conservation space. It's always been more like 1 in 99, you know? And so that needs to be changed. And it's not going to be changed with money necessarily. It's going to be changed from the grassroots up through volunteers. And so empowering volunteers and empowering businesses at the same time, both individual and on the business side, that is how we're going to bring about the change in the conservation industry that needs to happen so that this work is being actually done. And the number of complaints about you had a banquet in my area, but you haven't done a habitat project in my area for forever. Well, habitat projects, even with the complainants, still need to happen. Yeah. And it's only going to happen through an empowered and emboldened volunteer base.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the other reason I wanted to talk about this. I feel like it's very timely, is just because with all of the trouble that the federal government agencies are having right now, like uncertainty if there are going to be, you know, certain grants that are funded and like whether or not, you know, these agencies are going to be able to complete these projects. It's like, well, here's the time that volunteers can step in and hopefully still get some of those projects done. Yeah. And so I think there's going to be an increased demand and then increased opportunity for people to do more on the ground projects. Because that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, like a lot of fence poles in Montana is what we see a ton of, but I'm curious too, what have you noticed as opportunities? Just, I think the listeners are probably curious about what kind of opportunities you've seen in the last few years, or what might be coming down the pipeline too.
So when budgets get cut, some of the first things that get hit are recreation area maintenance logs.
Trail maintenance.
And
trailhead
that means cleanups. Yeah.
There's been some cool trail work in Montana the last few years too. But
those are some of the first things that are wildly accessible, as long as you know your liability risks, you know all how to organize it properly, how to get proper permission and all that. That's a lot for one person to look up, and that's where we're wildly connected for that. But you start seeing these easily accessible things are some of the first ones to drop off, which is crazy. You would think it'd be the hard stuff that they'd cancel, but a lot of times those things are tied to like university grants, some of these high alpine research projects and stuff like that do have citizen science opportunities to volunteer. Those tend to keep their funding because they're locked in under contract, but the things that drop off are the things that are ironically most accessible. Yeah. So fence poles. You're going to see a lot more private land conservation opportunities now that the land trusts have really done a great job of communicating the need for fence replacement. Our membership has moved literal tons and tons of fence over the last almost decade. Yeah. As part of these programs, a lot of it's on private land, and a lot of opportunities start to come, for hunters when you are volunteering some of your time in those aspects, in those locations. So we're keeping tabs on what is going away as far as what the Fed will manage, what states will manage. It's not just at the Fed level, at the state level, Habitat Montana, every time we have a legislative session, it's like, how do we take that money away? It's doing a good thing and it makes money for the state, but how do we break that? And so we, instead of, there are organizations built for fighting that. Mm-hmm. We're not built for that. We are built for helping you maintain your fight if you are fighting things and helping you avoid burnout as a volunteer. But what we're really built for is action. And so if something's taken away, what do we do? And how do we actually get the work done? Someone needs to, professionals, paid professionals, and, volunteer professionals need to be doing their lobbying and the things that they do. And that's why we certify for that as well, and why we provide support for that. But while that's happening, the real work has to happen too.
Yeah, that article that Outdoor Life had, I think you and I were talking about that last week, Marcus.
Oh, Andrew McKean's.
Yeah, it is an opportunity, and some people would say, no, it's a crisis. And if we lose all this funding or it is held up, it definitely has an impact. But it is an opportunity for hunters and anglers to go back to their roots of being the folks who first started this idea of volunteerism. Mm-hmm. And I love doing it. I can't even tell you how much of a smile I get when we go and do stuff like that. Like when you were talking about hauling literally tons. I thought about when we went and did the one fence pole, and we had to bring we had to bring llamas because we were in a wilderness area.
That one.
We had to get the fence, the posts, everything out of there.
Right.
But now I look back at that, and that was one of the funnest days that I had that entire year.
Oh yeah.
It was great.
And it's not only like just it's fun to go out and do that stuff and, pat yourself on the back or whatever. But I feel like you learn so much, like just from meeting the other people that are there too. Yeah. Like you just meet these people, like interesting people who have interesting stories. You can, like you said, like sometimes you get actual hunting opportunities because you're like, oh, this is a cool spot. Or you just learn more about the needs of a species too. Yeah. Like one of the things when we did some of those pronghorn, centric fence poles is those antelope are stuck like in this geographic area. Like you look at the GPS data from some of these studies and they're literally hitting these fences and then like going like 10 miles out of their way to try to get around. And just like that is a pretty big impact on the species. And like by doing this, you are creating more antelope on the landscape, in a sense, like in a roundabout way. And so it's cool to see the whole process, like, and you just learn more about the species, their needs, and meet super interesting people. Yeah. So
it's been my experience that the people who know the most about a habitat area are either trappers or chronic volunteers.
Chronic.
Because they spend as much time. I mean, they're often the person who went in and did the burn, or they know the timetable. There are a couple people in our membership who, if I ever wanted to go and snipe a morel spot for picking morels, I just need to know where they went and did a burn, because I know that's why. There's the altruism, but there's a little, you do get more than just, the health benefits and psychological benefits of the giving back.
Yeah, and I often get the question of, hey, I want to get involved. What do I do? Where do I go? And I often tell them to get a hold of you or the organization. If I am a business or I am an individual, where and I'm having that thought, where do I reach you, and what am I gonna be told? All right, yeah, here you go.
Fishandwildlife.org.
Same URL.
Same URL as it was before. It didn't that work out
nice? It's even more applicable.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they go to your website. The new FAQs about the new launch is pretty impressive.
That was a passion project.
But so if I'm an individual, I can go there. I'll find out. I'll get connected in a way of I can say, hey, I want to volunteer. It's kind of a way to raise your hand.
Yeah. So you sign up as an individual, and a couple things are going to happen. If you're just a private individual, signing up by yourself to become a member, we do have a paid membership now. It's got regular and life member. Hopefully, folks who have been volunteering a long time understand why the one perk for being a life member is the one perk that's in there. It's a tongue-in-cheek thank you for all that you do. But when you sign up, you get added to a curated newsletter group that you're not going to get random emails from other individual members, but you will be able to submit and receive best practice, here's what's working, here's what we're seeing kind of information that you can use. Not, here's something that's happening in your state that needs you to act on it now. It's not going to be that. It's going to be, here's a solution we have found. You're going to get that regularly. And then you're also going to have access to the same materials that our business members have on best practices for organizing cleanups, organizing trail projects, organizing habitat improvements, controlled burns, all the things that you might need to do for permitting. We will give you full support. And if we don't have the materials, you will still be able to have direct access to us to get those bespoke for your needs for what you're trying to do. Our goal is to have ordinary businesses and individuals become extraordinary volunteers for wildlife. And that takes this kind of approach. And you can be involved in a lot. I'm a life member of several groups, member of multiple groups, preaching to the choir here. And each one of them specializes in what they specialize in. We are much more broad. And because of that, we're able to really help you hone in at where you're best. For businesses, when you sign on, it's a very similar thing, except we also certify the hours volunteered. And our standard now is for every 5 people on the team. So whether that's your contract, whether you're a contractor for a business of your own, or you're actually, an employee of or owner of, for every 5 people who are full-time, it's 20 hours.
So 4 hours per FTE per year.
Yeah, essentially. Yep. Easy way to remember it, is we want to see. Now, it doesn't have to be every person volunteering.
Right.
Though. So if only one person is volunteering, that's fine too. But what we really want to help is businesses build programs that, again, add value on both the employee and on the external side. So that those 20 hours per 5 go to something that employees benefit from. Landscape obviously benefits from, but then also your consumer base understands and builds loyalty. And, it's cause marketing 101, but man, you would be astounded at how easily it's forgotten. So we help with every part of the volunteer process on the business side too. But signing up at fishandwildlife.org is where it starts.
Awesome. Well,
Cool.
yeah, this is exciting. I think it's cool. I like it. I think it's going to be,
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's gonna
We're
be a
excited
great
to
path
be in the
forward.
space and in the moment. People need attainable good.
yeah.
So is my certification still good?
It rolls over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All current business members rolled over. Because everyone who filed for last year rolled over to this year. Is the recertification process so much easier? It is so much easier on the business member end. Obviously, on our end, but on the business member end, you are not having to do forensic accounting anymore. It is very simple, and you'll see directly the benefits of the volunteer time. Everyone loves it.
Yeah. Well, I know when we do it, it's like you said, Marcus, it's always great for all of us to get out there. And we have people who do a ton of volunteering individually, but then we always try to do at least one group one a year.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jared.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Keep at it.
Will do.
Let us know how we can help.
All righty.